Welcome to the Peoria Art Guild and our newest exhibition with Clark Valentine and Between Spaces. And Clark, introduce yourself first.
Hi, I'm Clark Valentine. I'm the assistant professor of drawing at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, where I'm the head of the drawing. I'm also the BFA coordinator there. I'm an artist from Colorado initially. I'm in Arkansas now because I'm teaching there. And my work is about meditative practices. I work mainly in large-scale drawings. Just kind of like slow repetition of marks. So that's what you're seeing in this show here. I have a mix of sizes, so a number of larger pieces, some medium-sized works, and then some small works as well.
Jeff and I have a couple of different pieces of your work and also a portfolio because we were introduced to Clark and a number of other artists from Heather's collaborative, I Found You. And because of that, we've had a keen interest in the whole group as a whole, but also as Clark in particular. I was a drawing major, so I am keenly interested in drawings. And this is a work of works on paper, but let's talk about your process and also the simple materials that you use, because I think a lot of people think that, oh, this has to be, a lot of people, if you're a painter, you're using Winsor and you're using a particular type of oil paint or whatever. You, on the other hand, are rather simple.
Yeah. So all the work in this exhibition is on Stonehenge, which is like a really simple drawing paper. And for all of these pieces and most of the work I've been doing over the last handful of years, I'm working with gel pens. So I'm really interested in the ubiquitous tools that we pick up every single day, right? A ball pen, it's something you pick it up, you sign your name with it, you write notes in it, in your planner. It's something that we're constantly touching and playing with. So being able to, find newness in those materials, right? Just as we approach in a new way and kind of seeing like the nuances of it. That's something that's really exciting.
And I think you're a lot like me. You tend to serialize your work. So we have a lot of times where we've clustered a few pieces together. These are very geometric shapes, and but they're not precisely geometric. It's wonderful because they're skewed just a little bit. And there's a lot of different artists, and I know one of the artists that you've looked at is Richard Serra, and a lot of his drawings, which are huge mammoth pieces, but they are always they're not a perfect rectangle necessarily. There's something about it. And what I love is that your lines are so specific that they're absolutely perfect, but yet they're not. They're like the threads are bare, and you're not containing yourself like through a ruler. Instead, you're doing natural mark making. The two pieces that we have here are actually two pieces from Jeff's and my collection, and we have had these for a number of years, and we absolutely adore them. I was teasing. I told Clark yesterday that this is on our sister's heist list, because when we die, which she's convinced that I am dying first, she is going to raid our house of certain paintings. One is Ken Hoffman's Laughing Dog. The other now is on this one. And so Bill Conger is going to have to, as soon as I take my last breath, run over there and get this, because she is going to make it part of her collection or else. I think though the remarkable part about these two is that they're all about, this one is continuous line composition, and this one is more about weaving, but they are still continuous lines. They are just one place after the other. And this one in particular, Clark, why don't you explain your process, because I think this mimics what you do on almost every piece best.
Absolutely.
So
in this piece and pretty much every work in the exhibition, I start with two perfectly ruled lines. In this one, there's a line bisecting the piece vertically and then also horizontally. So what I do is I start with these ruled lines in the middle, then I radiate out, and on my second line I'm trying to perfectly mimic the first one. I'm working freehand after this, so inevitably a little mistake happens as I try to repeat that line. And then on my third line I'm trying to repeat the second line, so I have to work my way around that mistake. Another little mistake pops up, and as I radiate out from the center of these initial marks, the lines become more organic over time, and I think they kind of slowly, through like this entropic process become the natural marks that my hand wants to make. So it becomes this great documentation of my body.
And you start vertically or horizontally? Vertically usually?
It depends on the piece.
Okay.
Yeah, one layer and then the other.
And this is called weaving, but a lot of your others you refer to as cloth things. My favorite story about this piece in particular is that when we first got it, I went to frame it and I had it here at the Guild, and our friend Trish Williams, who's a fiber artist, is sadly no longer with us. I had it propped up in the front there, and she said, "Why did you frame a piece of cheesecloth?" And I said, if only it were cheesecloth.
Yep.
This is a drawing, and it is convincingly looks like it is a piece of cloth.
Yeah.
It really is. And I think your explanation is perfect, because it is that perfect line, and then when you're mimicking it, but it's just like anything that's woven. You can, or even knitted, you can drop a stitch, or it can just be less taut than the other. And it's an imperfection, but it doesn't glare at you. It just becomes part of the whole.
It's
and I think that's really important. We have two wonderful pieces that are 50 by 50. And this is on, what kind of paper is this one?
This is Stonehenge.
Stonehenge too, but it's just, the color is,
it's
cream.
cream.
It's cream color. I think what's so wonderful about this is that you've taken these lines and you've given us, in this case, a lot of volume. And there's certain nuances in your work that you have to really sit and look for.
Yeah.
But you all of a sudden realize that this is not just two, actually wedges, because you cut the triangle off, so it's more of a wedge type shape. But the wonderful thing is, if you look, you have a line that comes all the way down here that's very, very subtle. You have a line that comes here, then you have a line that comes here, you have a line that comes here. So you have depth to what's actually a flat. It's a two-dimensional drawing. But you also, and Sol LeWitt used to do that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just amazing.
It's
and
definitely...
how much of that is intentional?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's very intentional. I'm thinking a lot about just how do I manipulate and shift and adjust the grid to speak to our place in time right now, this very modernist thing. What does that mean in 2025? So yeah, these continuing lines that go across and they pick up after the negative space. I'm really excited about how that almost gives us this like ephemeral memory of the uniform
grid. Volume. It gives it literally volume, that there's weight to it, in the fact that they're very delicate and fine lines. And instead we've got this shape that we can really just kind of explore. And I think I appreciate more the fact that the repetitiveness creates more than just a pattern. It gives it a sense of being and being present.
And it becomes a thing. It's an object, not just an image of something else.
Really great. Now these three we've put on the very long wall. We wanted to give it a lot of space. It's actually 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet, so it worked out perfectly. And went for that. This is probably a medium-sized piece for you.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy the square format? Because a lot of your work is on a rectangular, usually, But I think the amazing thing is this series is featuring the circle. And it really is, you get these wonderful arcs, but it's also like the Venn diagram, because you have the overlapping, which gives you the commonality between the two, but yet it's independent. And it's unique all to itself.
Absolutely.
So how do you start to design these in your mind?
So these are the most recent work. So I've been working in circles for all of 2025. We go to this middle piece, again, talking about your Venn diagram. I think I'm really interested in the concept of circles as, this overlap in between the two is kind of like a sum that's greater than its parts in a way.
And that's what Venn is all about,
I have
really.
this one moment, right, that there's interest in this one circle, there's interest in the second circle, and then you get this weird tension of, does this overlap exist? Is this something I've made up in my mind? Is that something that's more solid than the other forms? I've been really excited
and I
with
think
that overlap.
the difference between the rectangular or square negative positive areas to the circular is just, I mean, this is just a wonderful, almost like trapezoid shape.
Yeah.
You know, it comes naturally. And again, our eyes just complete the frame of all these of these three circles. And the same goes here, where you just kind of reversed it.
Yes.
Instead of it coming in, it's going out.
Correct.
And you have these. Now, how do you, and when do you determine the width or the space between, literally, as you're saying, how do you determine that?
On the very first line. So yeah, when I place that first line in the middle of the page, whatever that spacing of the second line is, which depends on what I'm feeling in that moment, and then you say, well, I guess I'm locked into this spacing for the next week, month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever it is to finish a piece. So yeah, this was the first line, and the second line popped up, and after that I said, I guess we're gonna see if this works out.
This is just a hint large, you know, broader, I guess.
Yeah.
The space is broader than the other two. But at the same time, it gives you the same effect.
Yeah.
And it is that subtleness of this simple overlapping. And in this case, I think what is really remarkable is that we get so many organic shapes. We get these leaf-like things that are joined too, that they're just touching there, you know. And in the others, we have the leaf, but it's smaller and it's more condensed, I guess.
Yeah.
And I love this idea. And this idea of dividing the picture plane in basically half by using these horizontal or vertical lines really works, because that is a great lead-in to the print that you did. Angela and you worked together. You drew out actually 2 plates, and this is a relief print that's a 3-plate actually. We did first floated just a solid rectangular color form, which you and she worked on. I know the first one was a little darker, and you wanted a little lighter. And then she printed the 2 plates, one in red and one in this blue. And what it does, and it really does, the eye makes it a lavender almost. And the idea is, and I think the most exciting thing is that we've decided, because this was so successful, that we're going to do a whole study on using those 2 plates, varying the color.
No, I was really excited about this piece, and I think what's interesting about it is, of course, you have my initial marks, right, showing my hand, but then we also get Angela's response. Like, these are Angela's lines just as much as mine, and then her just great sense of awareness with color comes out here, where being able to pass that off and have this dialogue within the medium itself was really, really special. So yeah, Angela has just been amazing to work with.
If you get really close, you can see that right here is the vertical, the horizontal, I mean, line, much like the vertical one, especially in the circles. You started that way. But we're very excited about this. Here we have another large work, 50 by 50. How did you determine that space? Is it like Agnes Martin? Because, you know, she did 60 by 60.
No, she went small.
Because that was what she could move by herself. She was almost hermetic. And so she could move that by herself in her studio, and that was the perfect size in her mind too. Again, though, this is so soloist, because we have this wonderful thing, and this gives it, it's like it is 3-dimensional. It really gives it depth, and it gives it volume, and it's just a remarkable form. It really is.
Yeah, the 50 by 50 is pretty standard for me when I'm working large size. I'm really thinking about what encompasses my body. How can this be a document of like truly my movement and reference how I physically embody space? But yeah, this is the sister of this other piece.
The other thing is that a lot of people, I'm thinking of like Joan Mitchell and some of these, well, and even Mark Bradford today, are making these huge paintings, and they have to literally get on ladders, because it's more than just one physical motion to do anything. And then I know yours are not large, broad motions, because they're very, and how does that, by the end of the day, how is it making those smaller marks?
Yeah, I definitely, like if I have a good studio day, 8 or 10 hours, I lose a sense of time. So like I'm very aware in the morning when I'm like kind of stiff, you know, getting into the flow of the studio, where sometimes it feels good, sometimes it's a little uncomfortable, just getting started with anything. And then I definitely lose a sense of time throughout the day, and all of a sudden my alarm goes off, it's 5 o'clock, I gotta cook dinner, go to the gym. So yeah, there's a lot of time that just passes where your body kind of starts moving of its own natural accord, just responding to the drawing.
That's wonderful. I know Agnes Martin is one of your favorite artists, and as a source of inspiration, we have two, as you know, and one is very similar to the drawing. I believe it was from the Museum of Modern Art.
Yeah, that's
the one
her
that you,
Momo one. But you have one in that same series.
That same series.
Yeah.
And she did not, I mean, it's not therapeutic. It's just, it's almost meditative.
Yeah.
And it's that you do, like you said, get lost in time. And I think that that is something that sometimes people don't understand, that, you know, you should be exhausted or whatever, but instead you feel complete and satisfied.
Life-giving, yeah.
You know, and I think that's really great. These two pieces are really wonderful, and I know that this one started as after you had seen a wonderful drawing of Richard Serra's.
At the Arkansas Museum of Fine Art.
And the shape is almost identical, a little different, you know.
Yeah.
And then that one, I will tell you, I did a large drawing that was 4 foot by 6 feet, and it's this exact kind of thing. And I loved the idea of just having that, and mine was a little freer and everything, but I love the fact that we have this very strong vertical here, and then everything just kind of flows to the left. And most people would probably like it to flow to the right, just because human beings, that's how we go from left to right rather than right to left.
Well, and I'm left-handed, so
Oh,
I
are
think
you?
that
I'm
pull
too.
opposite, yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? Yeah, that we have this sense of reading, but also what do our bodies want, right? I think
And
this
what feels
movement the
better.
opposite way makes sense for my body. Yeah, yeah. Really.
Is there anything else about these two?
I mean, when we were talking about Richard Serra, I think that's something that stuck out to me. Early on, his concept of iteration, right? You know, when he did his verbs to pull, to twist. For all of these in the cloth series, I sat down, I went through about 500 or 600 shapes and just thinking iterations. What are my variants of the rectangle? And then so far I have about 60 of these pieces where it's like variants of a four-sided form, and it's infinite.
Do you go back and forth, or do you complete a series in your mind, at least complete a series and then move on to something else?
Yeah, I feel like once something's pretty exhausted, I don't, have this line where I'm saying, now I'm going to the next series. I think it's small steps where all of a sudden you look back and you realize you've made 20 or 30 different decisions that have you in a whole different field, right? Where the rectangles turn to triangles and the triangles are now in circles, and I don't know what's next, but I start to sense it coming, and you just have to follow where the work goes. Yeah.
Well, I know, and you've seen some of my work, but I do installations, and so some of my installations, like the last one I had for Bradley International, was 160 collages. But I know at that point that's enough, and it tells a story of sense of some sort. I think these last three are really remarkable. This, to me, is a diptych, even though they are individual pieces. But I think what's so amazing here is that so many artists, all of us, at one point in time understand the X, the cross, the cruciform. And this, to me, it's the black can be either the positive or the negative. Because if you've got this strong X here, the black is pops out. Okay, and this recedes. Or you can, if you're studying it, especially individually, this is what is in the foreground, and the black becomes background.
Absolutely.
And I think it's just optically, it's just this kind of fun.
Yeah, you have this fun figure ground switch, and when enough marks start to build, eventually you have a surface, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's this implied infinite surface of this grid behind the black that maybe
And
the cover's obscuring
they're
what's
both
infinitely
very
behind it.
individual, because you can see here that, and then how it has changed, and it's a little tighter over here than it is here.
That's
so
right, yeah.
It just is, and they're done individually, right? They're not done at the same time that you're ever doing it. This last piece is also a kind of a new direction where you're getting a lot of pattern. And so we really have to appreciate, again, the negative, positive, but also the strength of these zigzag lines that literally take you from the top to the bottom.
Yeah, this was a piece that I made this on a residency in Uruguay. I was just sitting, kind of exploring with pieces. This was a big breakthrough piece that really informed most of the work I did for the second half of 2023, and pretty much all of 2024. I was working on a body of works that really pulled from this one.
That's great. Well, this is up through the end of the month. You won't be here to take it down with us because he's going to be doing a residency in New Paltz. But come enjoy. I will say, compared to our previous exhibitions, it's much calmer. Take the time to sit, to really study, and just to appreciate your line and your sense of line. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much for
It's a
having me here.
privilege to have you here.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming to Peoria, Clark.
Thank you.